Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Paramita and I heartily welcome you once again to my channel. Today in this video lecture, I'll be discussing chapter 13 of the novel Sons and Lovers by DHLawrence. So without any further ado, let's get into the lecture. But before that, I would just like to point out that I would just like to make a request that if you are new to my channel and if you haven't watched any of my videos, so please go through my channel, go through the content, and if you really like it and find it helpful, do like it, share it, and please subscribe to my channel. So now without any further delay, let's get into the lecture. So like I said, today in this lecture, I'll be looking at chapter 13 of the novel Sons and Lovers, which is titled as Baxter Dawes. Now, in the previous chapter, which is titled as Passion, there we already saw that Paul went to the theatre in Nottingham with Clara. And there, while he went to the theatre, there he actually came across a pair of brown eyes. And now that someone maybe who was keeping a watch over them, but now in this chapter it becomes clear that that pair of eyes belonged to Baxter Dawes. And here in this chapter we will see that an encounter will take place between Baxter and Paul. So once in the pub we find that Paul encounters Baxter, and Baxter has justified reason to be angry with Paul because he has already found out that he's seeing his wife Clara. So we find that they pick a quarrel, they get into a quarrel in the pub, and then at the spur of the moment, what Paul does, it simply throws a glass of beer in Baxter's face, and amidst that chaos, what happens is Baxter is thrown out of the pub, and as a result of that he holds much grudge, much anger, resentment against Paul. So again we find that Paul encounters Baxter at Jordan, and there at Jordan we find that Paul is threatened by Baxter, and when the manager, Mr. Jordan, he tries to interfere, to put the quarrel to an end, to put the fight to an end, he is knocked down by Baxter, and as a result of this, what happens is he is fired, and he's also punished, but then he gets away with it, he gets off because Paul admits that the quarrel had nothing to do with the factory issues or nothing as such, but the quarrel took place between them because of Clara, because it arose over Clara. And then after that we find that the relationship, the affair between Paul and Clara continues, but the passion or the flame it had earlier, now it begins to lessen, and then there was a time when they used to be very close to each other, but their relationship now becomes less close and it gradually deteriorates. So this chapter, it actually marks the deterioration in the relationship, or it actually marks the deterioration in the relationship of Paul and Clara. And then after this, one day we find that on one occasion Paul, after seeing Clara home, he was returning, and then again he encounters Baxter, and then a terrible fight, in fact, takes place between the two, and Paul is he almost strangles Baxter, and the scene is significant in the sense because while the fight is going on between them, we find that Paul is almost on the verge of strangling Baxter. Okay, he's up on him. Okay, and he seems to have the upper hand, but then all of a sudden we find that Paul gives in to the situation. Okay, he surrenders to Baxter, and then Baxter fights back and knocks him down. So this part, the way Paul simply gives in to the situation and allows Baxter to fight him back, is important, because this may underline that maybe somewhere maybe somewhere Paul no longer has the will to leave, and therefore he wants Baxter to knock him down, to fight, to beat him as much as possible. Apart from that, there could be another implication that somewhere Paul feels guilty that he has taken away his wife from him. So maybe he's guilt conscious, and it is this guilt consciousness in him that makes him allow Baxter to knock him or to fight him. Or it could be also like I said, it could be his unconscious acceptance at the same time, that he's guilty of this because he has taken away Baxter's wife from him, and therefore he needs to be punished. So that's why I said that this part of the fight is significant. Another implication, or another point that maybe Lawrence is indicating, that Paul feels guilty not just about taking away someone's wife from him, but at the same time he realizes that he is someone who is unable to fulfill the psychological demands of love, and therefore he deserves punishment for the two. Firstly, for being guilty of stealing away his wife from him, and then at the same time because of his inability to fulfill the emotional demands, the psychological demands in love. So like I said, the relationship between Paul and Clara gradually deteriorates, though they continue to enjoy their sexual intimacy, their sexual they continue to have great satisfaction in their love making. And for Paul as well, like, it is a wonderful experience with Clara, because unlike Miriam, his intimacy with his physical intimacy with Clara allows him to get reunited unconsciously with the nature around. But there is a factor which causes their relationship to deteriorate. As far as Clara is concerned, she is mad with desire for him. It is true that she longs for Paul. She is mad, like I said, she is mad with desire. This is what is stated in the chapter as well, that Clara is mad with desire for Paul. But there is something that she dislikes in Paul. How he withdraws, like while they are together, he completely withdraws his conscious self, and he doesn't take into account, or he doesn't recognize Clara's presence personally. And so although Clara is always brimming with a mad desire for Paul, but somewhere she feels insecure. Like I have already mentioned in one of the chapters, that Clara is someone who always looks for a man who would be ready to commit himself to her, who would be ready to get into a committed relationship. But here she realizes that Paul can never commit himself to her in a relationship of passion, or be it a relationship of companionship. And therefore she finds that Baxter loved her much better than it actually leads to her realization, and it also makes her compare Paul with Baxter, because there, and somewhere during the daytime she feels as if during daytime Paul is not at all fond of her, while during night time he is fond of her. He wants to get intimate with her, but when it comes to the daytime, he is not able to do that. Had this relationship been a normal one, then this difference in the treatment of Clara wouldn't have occurred. Because had it been a normal relationship, then Paul would have responded to Clara in the similar manner, both during the daytime and the nighttime. To somewhere it makes readers feels that maybe during daytime Paul doesn't want to face this reality, that he is getting involved, or he has he feels that passion for a woman, and he has got involved into a passionate relationship with a woman. So their relationship appears to be a kind of relationship which belongs to darkness. And as far as marriage is concerned, we know that marriage is never possible, between Paul and Clara, because, like, the foremost reason being, Paul would never be able to get into an, let's say, an adult standard of commitment. He would never be able to achieve that, and therefore marriage is not possible. As far as Clara is concerned, we find that even Clara is not much willing, to divorce Baxter. Of course, she is ready to accept Paul as her lover, but she feels that Baxter is not as egoistic as Paul, because Paul is someone who is completely, self-content. Okay, and therefore he egoistically, keeps himself content. Okay, within keeps himself. Let's say his ego makes him, keep himself content and not completely give himself to Clara. Now, this is something which he also accused Miriam of, that although she gave herself to Paul, but she was not able to do that spontaneously. So we find that as far as Paul Morel is concerned, he is locked within his own self. Okay, and therefore he is self-engrossed in that sense, and which Baxter is not. So Baxter is someone who is capable, who is less less egoistic than Paul, and who is able to love Clara better than him. And like I said, that if you look at Baxter again from Clara's perspective, then it appears that Baxter is capable of an adult standard commitment, unlike Paul. So this conflict that is presented in the chapter, or this problem that is presented in this chapter, is kind of prepares the ground for the reunion of Clara and Baxter, which would take place in the novel later on. So we find that this actually shows the beginning of disintegration. In Paul, it is a process that has already begun, a process of disintegration. And the kind of love making that was earlier described as very passionate, now it appears to be very, very mechanical. So like I said, that they continue to have satisfaction in their relationship, yet their relationship deteriorates, disintegrates, and instead of being passionate like before, gradually their love making turns out to be, or becomes more and more, mechanical. And later on we find that in this chapter it is also mentioned that Mrs. Morel is very sick, and Paul is also accused by his sister Annie, because she actually accuses him, saying that Paul has been, very much engrossed in himself, and that made him quite negligent and not at all careful about his mother's health. So she says that had she been there, she would have completely taken care of their mother, and he is also informed that by Annie that their mother's health is gradually, deteriorating, and because Paul has been so much engrossed in himself, he was only bothered about his own. He got completely, engrossed in his relationship. So it made him negligent, okay, towards his mother, and therefore he ignored the signs. He couldn't even, identify the signs of his mother's health condition. But that again doesn't mean that had Paul been very careful, okay, towards his mother's health, Mrs. Morel wouldn't have suffered from such ill health. This was bound to happen because this suggests that it only suggests that there has been some failure, some negligence in Paul's attention, even to his cherished mother, or even to that person for whom he feels immense love. And that his grief, that his sorrow over his mother's sickness is the result not only of love, but also, it is to some extent of remorse. So basically what we find in this chapter, that Paul is also criticized by Clara as far as their relationship, or as far as his response to Clara is concerned. Then we find that Lawrence also prepares the ground for the reunion of Baxter and Clara, which would take place in the upcoming chapter. Then another important point that is highlighted in this chapter from using Clara's perspective, that Paul is a man who is completely incapable of achieving in his life ever, maybe, any adult standard commitment, any commitment that is needed, in a dedicated or in a relationship to which someone feels, that emotional allegiance, or in a relationship towards which someone is completely devoted. And a comparison is also drawn between Baxter and, like I said, Paul. So here we find that another thing that is mentioned in this chapter, as far as Mrs. Morel is concerned, we find that after the fight that takes place between Baxter and Paul, of course, Paul becomes sick, and he continues to be sick, since that fight between them. But now Mrs. Morel is the one who begins to show more signs of, ill health in this chapter, and she falls sick, and after Paul recovers, when he is nursed back to health by his mother, we find that he goes on a holiday with one of his friends, with one of his friends, and after that, when he returns, he finds that his mother has absolutely collapsed. She's bedridden. She continues to stay for almost, I think, 2 months at Annie's place, and that makes her a little better, and then she is diagnosed. And after that, when she is diagnosed, when she is taken to the doctor, it is diagnosed that she is suffering from cancer. And so it is only just after she is diagnosed with cancer that after that she stays at Annie's place, for 2 months, and there, because of the care, the attention that is paid to her by Annie, and the way she is taken care of, we find that her health, improves a little bit, and then after those 2 months, she is brought back to Bestwood. And the neighbors there, they also become very curious, and they also get surprised having looked at Mrs. Morel, because her health has truly deteriorated to such an extent that it has impacted her external appearance at the same time. So that also makes the neighbors kind of they appear to be a kind of shocked, having seen her ill health, or having seen her deteriorated health condition. So with this, we come to the end of discussion of the chapter 13. I hope you are able to understand all the aspects of this chapter. So if you find the lecture helpful, do like it, share it, and like I always request to all of you, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Until then, bye-bye.